Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my 2022 reading stats, my 2023 reading goals, and my 2023 anticipated releases. I would love to hear about your 2022 reading stats or some goals you have in 2023, so make sure you comment those down below. This is a picture of how many books and how many pages I read each month. Some months I read 10 books, and other months I read 23 books, and I added all these numbers up and it comes to a total of 167 books. I also read 48,782 pages. Since we're speaking of pages, I also kept track of how many pages I read each day on a template from Books, Wine, and Risty on Instagram. And so I will leave a little picture here of what that would look like. I also wanted a color visual, so I just printed this off of a random website from Google. And at the bottom, I wrote my daily average, and then I added all these numbers up and then divided it by 12. And my daily average for every single day of reading is 133 pages. Sometimes I didn't read for a few days, like you can see here. Here's a big stretch that I didn't read. Here's a stretch, here's a stretch, and then other days I read more than 133 pages. Also, something you may be wondering is she read 167 books, but she didn't talk about all of them on YouTube. And something I decided was that I was only going to talk about books I recommend. There are a few reasons and exceptions to that rule. One of the reasons was that if I didn't like a book, I didn't want to talk about it because I know the author put a lot of work into writing the book, and I didn't want to say on here that I didn't like the author's writing. There are also some books that I think are really good books, but I just didn't talk about them on BookTube because I didn't think they were worth talking about, and also because I don't do monthly wrap-up videos every month. I don't want these videos to be an hour long, but I'll talk about that more in my 2023 goals. Though at the same time, I was watching a video on YouTube from Katie at PaperbacksandPonytails, and she was talking about that even if you don't like a book, there's nothing wrong with saying that you don't like a book, and that even if you don't like the book, by talking about it, someone else might read the book, and then it might become one of their favorite books. So I might change that in 2023, but we'll have to see. The other reason is I will not talk about any controversial books where people would end up writing hateful comments or try to report my YouTube channel. I was a part of Intentional by Grace's reading challenge on Facebook and Instagram, and here is the graphic for that. There are 3 levels, and as you can see, I completed all 3 levels. This challenge allowed me to get out of my comfort zone and read books that I wouldn't normally read. After I finished reading each book, I filled one of these out, and it was really good because I was able to think more deeply about the book, and then I was able to describe the main point of the book, write a favorite passage or section I had. I could think about what I learned, would I read it again, and then the category that it was in. And then there was also this notable quotes that I sometimes filled out. I didn't fill this out every time, but there were some times that I did it. And I also filled this out after I finished her challenge and went on to read other books. I kept track of my reading in multiple places this year, so now I'm just going to go over some of the things that I tracked this year. First thing is the 2022 bracket. This is from Books and Buzzy on Instagram. So I put my favorite book in each month, and then I just narrowed it down to see which one would be my favorite book of the year. Another template was called the Monthly Bookish Stats from Books with Buzzy on Instagram. Was how many books your monthly goal was, how many books you read, how many books you bought, your fave and least favorite book of the months, then star ratings, plus if there were books you DNF'd, and then where you're at in your yearly goal. Another thing I did with a template from Books, Wine, and Risty was I would screenshot each of the books I read each month, and then I would put them in a template and share it to Instagram. Since we're talking about templates right now, there were 2 other templates that I filled out consistently through the whole year. One was from Books, Wine, and Risty, and it was the alphabet challenge. I didn't really make this into a challenge. I just took a look at all the books I read at the end of each month, and if there was a book that started with that letter, then I would put it in the template. As you can see, there are still some letters missing, Q, V, X, and Z, and that's totally okay. And it was just a lot of fun filling it in. And another template I filled out on a monthly basis was from Laura's Loading Library on Instagram, and it was the 2022 Shelf Reduction Challenge. So on January 1st, I started off with 266 books that I owned that I hadn't read yet. So each month I would put down the number of books from my shelf that I read, the number of books I bought that I hadn't read yet, because sometimes I bought a book that I had already read, so I didn't count that in there, and then the books that I unhauled from my shelf. The reasons for unhauling a book could be was I wasn't interested in it anymore, or I didn't really see myself reading it again, so there was no point in keeping the book. So from this graphic, you can see that some months have really small numbers and some months have really big numbers, and this made me really aware of the books that I was putting on my shelf. I learned that I'm not going to put a whole bunch of books on my shelf just because they seem interesting, even though I still occasionally do that. But it has really caused me to think whether each book truly belongs on my shelf. This is a template I copied off of Pinterest. So the first thing is the pages per book. You can see that they are divided by 100 pages, and I read 28 pages that were less than 200 pages, 48 pages that were between 201 and 300 pages, 77 books that were between 301 and 400 pages, 11 books that were between 401 and 500 pages, 2 books that were between 501 and 600 pages, and 1 book that was over 600 pages. The smallest book I read was 43 pages, and the largest book I read was 642 pages. I also kept track of where the authors are from, so the books that I read authors were from, there were 131 from the USA, 9 from United Kingdom, 1 from Israel, 2 from Poland, 1 from Iran, 4 from Canada, 1 from Australia, 1 from Belgium, 1 from Switzerland, 2 from Sweden, 3 from the Netherlands, 1 from Italy, 1 from Myanmar, 1 from North Korea, 1 from Dominican Republic, 1 from Denmark, 1 for Mauritania, 1 for Kyrgyzstan, 1 for Japan, 1 for Uganda, 1 for Nigeria, and 1 for Russia. I also kept track of the gender of the authors, so 55% were female, 30% were male, and 15% were co-authors. And then at the bottom, you can see how many pages I read here. So I already said that I read 167 books and 48,782 pages. And then the last section here is genre, more specifically fiction and nonfiction. 60% of the books I read were fiction and 40% of the books I read were nonfiction. And then this breaks it down into each specific genre. So I read 75 Christian books, 8 autobiographies, 11 mysteries, 2 history books, 7 romance, 18 memoir, 22 historical, 2 biographies, 1 poetry, 2 fantasies, 2 classics, 3 contemporaries, 3 thrillers, 1 dystopian, and 10 Amish books. And the final thing I have in this book is a month view. After I would finish reading a book, I would write it down here, and then at the end of the month, I would color code everything based on what I rated it on Goodreads. Pink is 5 stars, and I rated 71 books 5 stars. Green is 4 stars, and I rated 68 books 4 stars. Purple is 3 stars, and I rated 23 books 2 stars. Red is 2 stars, and I rated 3 books 2 stars. And yellow is 1 star, and I rated 2 books 1 star. When I rated books under 3 stars, I would always put a reason on Goodreads as to why I was rating a book that low. I also used Storygraph to look at my reading moods, and my top 3 reading moods for 2022 were emotional, reflective, and informative. So as you can see, I keep track of a lot of things, and if I keep up with my tracking, it doesn't take much time, either on a monthly basis or after I finish a book. The only thing that I normally get behind on is this coloring this page in, but since I have it in another template, how many pages I read, it doesn't take long for me to color this in because I can just go back and look. And if I'm being completely honest, I just colored all of December in right before I started filming this video, and it maybe took me 5 minutes. So we're going to move on to my 2023 reading goals. The first goal I have, and to be honest it's more of a commitment than a goal, is before I read any other book, I'm going to read my Bible. Back in 2021, when I started reading as much as I do now, in 2021 I read 146 books, I made a commitment to myself that I would read the Bible before I would read any other book. And there were only 2 times where I caught myself reading another book before I read my Bible. So I stopped reading, and then after I went back and finished my Bible reading, then I went and read my other books. Right now I'm currently reading and studying through the book of Ruth. It's only 4 chapters, and I just finished chapter 3 today, so when you see this video on Saturday, I'll be finished Ruth, and I will be moving on to 1 Samuel and some of the Psalms. Currently, I'm studying through the Bible and reading it chronologically, so after Ruth would come 1 Samuel and some of the Psalms. So I would encourage you this year to read the Bible before you read any other book. Dig in and see what God's word says for yourself, not what anyone else says about it. You will never regret spending time with God and being in his word and studying and learning from it. And there's no book that's more important than the Bible. And if you miss a day, that's okay. But don't let it discourage you from reading the next day. Or don't let it discourage you and say, oh, I missed a day, now I have to start my reading plan all over again. Just pick up where you left off on the previous day. Another goal is with the templates. I would like to fill out all of the same templates I filled out last year, as long as the creators are still making the templates. Same thing with Intentional by Grace. Even if I do a different challenge that's not a part of the Intentional by Grace, I still think it's really valuable to fill that out, and then I can look back on what I thought about the book. And I think it's really interesting at the end of the month or the end of the year to see all those different stats that I had throughout the year. I also want to keep my monthly reading goal at a total of 4 books per month. I know that's a really low number, and I know that I exceeded it every single month in 2022. I don't want to set a high number and then not achieve it and then feel like I failed, even though there really is no failing with reading. About halfway through 2021, I came up with a goal that I wanted to read a book by an author from every country in the world. So I am still continuing that goal. Last year I read authors from 21 countries, and this year I read authors from 22 countries, but out of those 22 countries, 13 of those were new countries. So my total countries that I've read from entirely is 34 countries that I've read authors from. I would also like to participate in Intentional by Grace's reading challenge again in 2023, but instead of doing all 3 levels, I'm only going to do 12 books, which is the first level, but I'm not going to do all 12 books from the first level. I've highlighted the books that I want to do, and these are the books that I feel I wouldn't read on a normal basis. So if I was just to pick these 13 books here, I feel like I would read all of these except this highlighted one. So I just went through the list this year and highlighted the books that I don't normally read, and so that's how I decided which ones I'm going to read. The specific goal with this is to be able to give myself more freedom in my reading and allow me to do other reading challenges that I would want to do. So one of the challenges I want to do is the Read Your Bookshelf 2023 challenge, and this comes from ChantelReadsAllDay on Instagram and YouTube. And so in January, you would read a book that starts with a or the in the title, and then in February you would have complimentary colors of the January book on the cover, and so each prompt plays off of the previous month's prompt. Another reading challenge I want to do is the Read Around the World-A-Thon from Katie at Paperbacks and Ponytails, and you roll the dice and you move to the spot that you roll. Each of these spaces are a different reading prompt. And then also in the month of January, BethanyBringsBooks from YouTube and Paperbacks and Ponytails are hosting a Ring in the New Books, and I'd like to also participate in this reading challenge as well. I'd also like to participate in the Buzzwordathon from BooksandLala, and there's a specific word every month that you look for that has to be in the title of the book you're reading. So I have 4 monthly reading challenges and then a readathon that I'm doing in January. So that allows me to pick 4 books a month, and then hopefully that will give me more freedom to read other books that I want to read. At the end of December of 2023, I would like to have less than 20 unread books on my shelf, and if I have more than 20, that's okay, but I'd like to try and aim for 20. I also want to try and post monthly wrap-up book videos on YouTube, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen because I don't want it to become something I have to do and then end up dreading it. So I'm pretty much just going to keep what I post the same on YouTube. So some piano videos, some travel vlogs, some book wrap-up videos. There's some tags that I saw that I would be interested in doing around 2023 Christmas. I only started BookTube at the beginning of January in 2022 with my top reads of 2021, and I read 146 books in 2021. So there's still a whole bunch of books that I still want to talk about that I haven't yet. As well, I want to do some more book recommending videos, like if you read this book, you'll like this book. I might do some monthly TBR videos, but to be honest, I don't really have a TBR, but now that I'm doing more monthly reading challenges, that might change. But also, I could choose a book for one of the monthly reading challenges and do it in the TBR video, and then those books could completely change again, and then I won't have read any of them that you saw in the TBR video. And then that would mean me posting the same books that I would want to read month after month, and I don't want to be doing that. I also want to talk about the books that I'm looking forward to reading in 2023. These books are mainly going to be pre-orders that I've ordered that I'm really excited for. Daughters of Victory by Gabriella Saab. This is her second book. I read her first book, The Last Checkmate, in 2021, and it was my 6th favorite book of the year in 2021. Daughters of Victory will be released in January. The Little Wartime Library by Kate Thompson. This book will be released on February 21st. I haven't read anything by her before, but the story sounds really interesting. This is the description on Goodreads. London, 1944. Clara Button is no ordinary librarian. While war ravages the city above her, Clara has risked everything she holds dear to turn the Bethnal Green tube station into the country's only underground library. Down here, a secret community thrives with thousands of bunk beds, a nursery, a cafe, and a theater, offering shelter, solace, and escape from the bombs that fall upon their city. Along with her glamorous best friend and assistant Ruby Monroe, Clara ensures the library is the beating heart of the life underground. But as the war drags on, the women's determination to remain strong in the face of adversity is tested to the limits when it may come at the price of keeping those closest to them alive. The Keeper of Hidden Books by Madeline Martin. Anything that's historical fiction written by Madeline Martin is going on my shelf. So I'm very excited for this book, and it's being released on August 1st. The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I love the Inheritance Game series, so I'm super excited for another book in this world. This book releases on August 29th. Long Gone Come Home by Monica Chanel Kigar. This book releases on June 6th. This is her first book, and the story sounds so interesting. This is the description on Goodreads. Birdie Jennings dreams of a big life beyond her small town of Mount Sterling, Kentucky, beyond her mundane job tying tobacco leaves at Wright's factory, beyond her position as the baby of the family. Her life changes when she meets Jimmy Walker, a smooth talker and dreamer. Jimmy makes big promises of a magical life filled with poetry, passion, and music, and Birdie is quickly swept off her feet. But some short years later, after they marry, Jimmy leaves for work and never returns, and Birdie is left behind with 2 toddlers and no explanation for her husband's latest disappearance. With no support system, Birdie moves back home with her overbearing mother. But just as she's settled into her new life, Birdie witnesses a gruesome murder and flees Mount Sterling to avoid questioning. For the first time, Birdie is truly on her own. She travels to the big cities of Cincinnati and Chicago, just as she dreamed, but with a new goal: find Jimmy and bring him home. Along the way, Birdie explores the bustling jazz scenes in the hottest nightclubs and backwoods juke joints. Finding her place among criminals and saints is tough, but Birdie is tougher, and she soon wonders if an independent life on her own terms is the better way forward. I also heard that Jennifer Ryan is coming out with a new book in 2023, and that's all I know, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. I also really like the series Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and I heard that he wrote a 4th book in the series. But since the books are written in Japanese, I have to wait for it to be translated into English. So I'm hoping to either read that book hopefully in 2023 or 2024. Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already done so, make sure to comment some of your reading goals down below. Remember to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any future videos I post. On January 11th, I'm going to be posting my top books of 2022. Also, don't forget to like and share this with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks for watching!